Hi, my name is Maria Paula and today I will be talking about relativism. I would like to introduce this topic by asking you, what do you think about vegans? Do you think being vegan is it right or is it wrong? And we will be talking about this a little bit later. So, where did this theory originate and who are the authors? The word relativism first appeared in 1859 in the writings of a Scottish philosopher, Sir William Hamilton. It probably entered English by the German word Relativismus, which was being used by the followers of the massively influential German philosopher Immanuel Kant. But more interesting than the origin of the word relativism is the fact that the idea goes back long before the big brains of the 18th and 19th centuries. In fact, scholars generally agree that the first relativist was the ancient Greek philosopher Protagoras. Protagoras wrote a book called Aletheia, which means truth. The opening line declared, "Man is the measure of all things, of the things which are that they are, and of the things which are not that they are not." His provocative point was that the truth and falsehood are determined not by things outside of a person, but from a person's own perspective. In other words, the measure of truth is the viewpoint of a man himself. But not everyone was happy with Protagoras. Perhaps no name is more associated with philosophical wisdom than the Athenian intellectual Plato. Plato provided a devastating critique of Protagoras' idea that man is the measure of all things. If everything is relative to man's perspective, argued Plato, that must also apply to Protagoras' own idea that truth is relative. If so, his view is just an opinion. But if Protagoras really thinks it is true that the things are only true according to a person's perspective, then that would mean Protagoras' idea is actually false. Why? Because at least one truth would not be relative. In other words, Plato showed that relativism of the strict kind proposed by Pythagoras refused itself. As soon as you believe it is true, you prove that it isn't. So, what does this theory talk about? Relativism is the theory of knowledge or ethics which holds that criteria of judgment are relative, varying with the individual time and circumstance. As a worldview, relativism has impacted the range of human experience, morality, culture, religion, philosophy, science, and the very notion of existence itself. So, what's the main idea in this theory? There is no absolute right or true. There are only beliefs which are right or true relative to the culture in which they are held. Let's talk about epistemology. What relationship the researcher has with the research. In other words, what the researcher believes about the nature of the reality. And the answer is everything. The relationship between the researcher and the research is very close because, as I told you before, the truth is in the eye of the beholder. Ontology. Ontology asks the question, what is the nature of the reality and its characteristics? In other words, what are real things and what are product of our minds? Let's explain this with an example. There is an ancient India parable in the Buddhist scriptures which tells how 6 blind men were once asked to inspect an elephant and describe what they could feel. Close your eyes and think, if you were blind, how would you describe an elephant? The first one at the head declares, "Sir, an elephant is like a pot." The second feels the ears and exclaims, "An elephant is like a winnowing basket." Another is led to a leg and insists it is a pillar. And the one holding the tail is sure it is a brush. The point of the parable is that when it comes to matters philosophical, truth is in the eye of the beholder. In other words, your perspective determines your views. Axiology. And this is what makes good to be good and bad to be bad. But in relativism, there is no actually a real good or a real bad. Everything depends on the viewpoint of the man himself. Let's put an example. Remember what I told you about being vegan? Is it right or is it wrong? There is no actually a real good or real bad, or a real right or a real wrong. It is just your viewpoint what determines what you think about it. Finally, let's talk about another example. Have you ever seen or eaten food from another country, such as dried squid or fried crickets, and think of it as weird or gross? Well, if you have, that means you use your own culture as the center and evaluate other cultures based on it. You are judging or making assumptions about the food of other countries based on your own norms, values, or beliefs. Instead of thinking fried crickets are disgusting, you should instead ask, why do some cultures eat fried insects? You may learn that fried crickets are full of protein, and in Mexico it is a famous Oaxaca regional cuisine and have been eaten for thousands of years as a healthy food source. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy it.